Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is an amazing opportunity. Thank you for the Chamber of Commerce and for the government. And so happy to be here with two leaders of the changes that we're going to look. It's Mauricio Ramos and Freddy Vega. We really are very excited to have you here. Susan, when she made the introduction, already mentioned the importance of connectivity, the importance of, even more in the pandemic, we realized that if it wouldn't be for our good internet or bad internet that made us suffer when we were there, we couldn't have work. And we all had to run in the technology and catch up. For those of like my age, which weren't so good at it, we had to run and we had to catch up, and we were able to do a lot of things. So seen, and I think now nobody can discuss now the importance of that, we have a lot of challenges at this point. So it is understood that digital capacity building is key to both students and workers, as well as policymakers and regulators seeking technology expertise in digital infrastructure. How can technology be more inclusive, help students? Please, Mauricio, give me your thoughts first.
So we chatted yesterday a lot. I think we've agreed to agree on a lot of things. And there's a few things that we've agreed to do together and a lot of things that we may have to agree on. So I think what we jointly represent is the two things that will make a difference. One is the digital highways, the infrastructure, the connectivity, whether it's mobile or fixed, whichever way that will deliver some form of good connectivity to both urban, rural areas across the region. But we are, if I can make the parallel, like the supermarket, if you will. But you know, this digital infrastructure is just bits that get moved around, and it requires a lot of valuable content that people want to use. And one of those most important pieces of content is education, not just entertainment, but education. Yeah. So we're like a supermarket and the stuff that goes on the shelves.
Latin America is a place where when people are born in poverty, they don't get out. They really don't. It takes 5 to 10 generations, according to the OECD, to get out of poverty. At Platzi, we have 3 million students all around Latin America, and we see these people getting out of poverty. And when we try to analyze what they do besides studying technology and getting a job in the tech industry, or the conditions that they have around it, what they had was some kind of connectivity and some kind of access to actual computing. I think that it's very common in our, from this side of the table, to believe that only a phone connected to internet is enough. But you never really create with a phone, besides Instagram and videos and participation in social media. When you're creating actual professional stuff that will allow you to get a job, you're using an actual computer. And only 48% of families, not even people, families in Latin America have access to a computer. Internet connectivity, it's always at the core of what we see as the easiest, most scalable way to break the cycle of poverty. And the second thing, which is even harder, sadly, is access to a computing device that allows them to create, not only to consume. When we only focus on internet connectivity, we focus on these things, on our bricks of glass that connects us to the rest of humanity. But even though they're incredibly amazing, I'm not trying to undermine the impact of smartphones. It's probably the most important thing that has happened in humanity lately. It only allows us to consume. And for education to actually succeed, and we saw an example of this very dramatically during the pandemic, we need access to computing devices that allow us to create. So connectivity is definitely the first step, and we're seeing many countries, probably Uruguay leading that battle, creating total access for a country to actual connectivity. And then the second step will be that people will need access to a different kind of education. We have already tried for 200 years the kind of education that we right now have all across our continent. And after a kind of apocalypse that made us all stay at home and change the way that we behave as a species, we all wanted to go back to classrooms and the traditional way that we do things, but we now know that there are different ways, and that education plus computing plus internet, it's probably still the easiest way to break the cycle of poverty in a region that really need it.
No doubt.
It may make sense to maybe just lay the basics of where we are in connectivity. We call them, at Millicom, at Tigo, we call them digital highways. And the reason we use that term is so that people understand that this is the stuff that bits will travel on. And we call it digital infrastructure, so it is clear that it's available to the entire community. It's like basic infrastructure. So where we are today, just roughly speaking, on mobile networks, on average in Latin America, most people don't realize this, the actual coverage of a mobile broadband network, 4G, which provides high-speed mobile broadband data, is about 90%. So there is a lot of coverage already. 95, 96% of the population is already covered with a mobile network, 90% covered with a 4G high-speed broadband network. But only about 40 to 50% of the people actually use a 4G mobile broadband enabled phone. The problem is not the coverage, the problem is the access to the device, whether it's a mobile phone or some other form of device, and the service associated with that. So really, it's no longer a coverage issue, it's an access issue. It's an affordability issue of the device and the content on it.
No
That's
doubt.
important so we don't spend our time building new networks and more coverage.
So you're saying we have enough networks, we need access to the devices and access to the programs as well, right? That would be the solution or the way to get out of, or to increase and better what the people receive and how to get out of this poverty.
I'll tell you a very telling story. So we sell a lot of prepaid, and we have a lot of agents on the streets. You may have seen them wherever you are in the streets of Tegucigalpa or Pereira or wherever you happen to be. And these agents, I was visiting with them just a couple of weeks ago in Honduras, and they came up to say to me and said, "Boss, thank you." And I said, "For what?" "Finally, we can sell a phone that is $30.
Okay, so access.
We can sell a phone that's $30. That was a breakthrough, a 4G phone that's $30, not 50, not 60, 30.
Totally understood. Well, what are the common challenges and barriers that companies face when working with governments in the Americas on digital capacity building development? And how were you able to overcome those challenges? And this is actually first for you, Mauricio.
I'm sure you're going to have a lot of good ideas, because we talked about this yesterday a lot, but I'll start with some of the basics, and then we'll go to some of the creative ideas. The first thing is we need to change the way we think about things. In every conversation that I have about digital inclusion and how to bring more people to have more internet, every government official, every think tank says it's very important that we do it. Digital inclusion. Let's build more networks. And I say, no, coverage is not really the issue. Let's work on access. That's number one. Number two, that conversation which brings in those other 50% that don't have mobile broadband or any other form of broadband. We have that conversation. We agree that digital is important, should be a priority for every government. 30 seconds later, we talk about spectrum auctions. And we kind of go, okay. And spectrum auctions that are going to be measured in their success by the amount of money they bring in. And whether it's 100 pesos or $100 billion, that money that went into spectrum did not go into the network. That money that went into paid into spectrum did not go into digitalization. That money that went into higher spectrum fees, whether it's 4G, 5G, whatever, did not go into what we just talked about, which is including more people into access. So we need to change that mindset. The other one that we need to change truly going forward, these networks are super expensive, billions of dollars that do not exist in our countries. They have to be sourced from Stockholm and London and everywhere else, which means they need to be given a return. But for some reason, we're still stuck with the view that we need to have 4 or 5 networks built one right on top of the other, which means that if we build 4 networks in any given country, each one of them, mathematically speaking, is going to have a usage of 25%. For each one we built, therefore, we're going to have 75% of the coverage we built unused. Talk about wasting money. So the notion that we need more networks to have more inclusion is flawed. We should have less networks and have more investment into them. So we really need to change our way of thinking.
So
I don't know if you agree.
Sure. From my end, I basically spent all my time thinking about education and how to increase the access to that, connected with connectivity and computing. And it's fascinating to listen to people that basically, I think they were talking this backstage. There's two kinds of managers, two kinds of directors, and two kinds of government people. The ones that created most of their career in the 80s and 90s, and the ones that most of their career happened this century. And there is this dramatic disconnect between what they believe and what actually happened. For example, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you believe that the current young people that have this all the time, they are digital natives. Have you heard of that? Anybody here? Digital natives? Raise your hand if you heard digital natives, please. Okay, everybody else is lying. But like 50% heard digital natives. Do you know what a digital native is? It's someone that cannot change the Wi-Fi password because they don't know how to. Ask a teenager, what's a file? What's a folder? They don't know. They cannot know. Then ask them to understand the folder structure of a computer. These things don't have a folder structure. They don't have a file. And these are things that we take for granted because we had to work with Excel and Word. And if we are sad, PowerPoint. That's what we have to work with. And they don't because they work with apps. You know what that creates? That creates a generation of people that don't know how to create, only to consume. This is already a problem in many universities and many other education efforts around the world. When I talk to computer science deans all across here in the US, in Latin America, they now have to teach basic computing at college because our abstraction devices have eliminated the need to understand how things are created, just how things are consumed, which goes with your point on access. We all sit down here and talk about this kind of how do I get internet to this little town, and it is very important, extremely important, but it's almost a fixed problem. We have to move on to the next problem, which is now that they have this, how do they make use of it? And then there's the next problem, which is if we believe this about digital natives, we also have other beliefs, like the weird combination of the belief that titles, certifications are the most important thing, but then we don't know where the talent is, and we don't know why the talent is so expensive. While in reality, I'm pretty sure that 100% of you almost never hired someone out of college. Some human goes 5 years or 4 to 5 years to a place where they cannot work full time and spend a lot of money, and once they get to the job market, nobody hires them because from this side of the table, we truly, strongly believe, even if we don't say it out loud, is that if they're just graduated, they don't know anything. So we create a lot of debt, a lot of these weird situations, and then we wonder why we don't have an exploding tech industry everywhere in Latin America. Well, at the same time, Latin America in particular, which is my focus, is a goldmine of talent. Same time zone as the US, same culture. We listen to the same songs, we watch the same movies. It's right there, so we work in the same hour, but because we don't speak English and we don't have access to computing devices that allow us to create, and to this kind of knowledge, it's very hard to get the most out of the largest consumer market in the world. But it's changing. The US government last week, or 2 weeks ago, announced that for federal jobs, they're going to stop looking for certificates and diplomas, and they're going to change their hiring practices to focus on skills. A lot of organizations have said this before, and it takes a long time to change this, but it's kind of exciting, because if they lead with that example, what's going to happen with the rest of Latin America? I'm very, very, very excited to see if it works.
Well, yeah, education is a big issue, especially in the countries like Latin America, where you don't have access. Not everybody has access. And the highway, as you said, and the programs like the ones you prepare can make a big difference. So what would you ask the governments? What would be your advice? Should we do? Have the highways? Now, what is the next step?
Stop doing silly auctions. That's number one. Makes no sense as a model going forward. Do like Panama did. Put the spectrum to work at lower prices to whoever of the operators is willing to invest the more. Then the digital highways will happen faster and stronger. If you want to get to where we come together, let's work on putting those high-speed highways together with coding capacities into the future. This is a dream I've held for long. The way we get to 10 years from today, 20 years from today, have created a real talent pool of individuals that create tech in our markets, is combining these digital highways, this access to high-speed broadband in whatever manner it is, with coding capacities for that talent. So I would have one ask from the ministries of education and the presidents: work with us, helping select the better talent so that we can put together coding classes connected with connectivity, and those kids will find their way to work from home, to create the next Silicon Valley, and stop migrating to the US.
Wonderful.
I think that it's important to realize that the change in the economic structure of Latin America is inevitable. Forever, we have been a region whose economy is based on extraction. And basically, that's it. It's not even agriculture, with a couple of exceptions. It's extraction of what's in the ground. And that has been extremely important, but we now live post-pandemic in a world where anybody from anywhere can work in extremely high-paid jobs. I have a student that grew up under a bridge, not figuratively, literally under a bridge, in a family of 6, of which 5 of his brothers work as criminals. And he decided to learn data science on his own with Platzi. And he's now a data scientist earning 10 times, 20 times more than the best that any of his brothers ever earned, because technology pays better than crime. And this is inevitable. Everybody's going to see this. Remote work changed the game, and the tech industry is the highest growing industry. All jobs will become tech jobs. Lawyers are automating things with machine learning. Accountants will they will not all disappear, but 80% of accountants will disappear because it's highly easy to automate it with the current state of the art of machine learning. And any other jobs will integrate technology. And technology is an equalizer of opportunities because you don't need a fancy computer. You just need any computer as long as it has a keyboard and a good internet connection. So this will change. We are a goldmine of talent, just waiting for it to explode, and it's slowly exploding. Every single Silicon Valley company that I talk to is hiring in Latin America. The one thing that doesn't allow us to explode faster is that in Latin America, people that speak conversational English are few and far in between. It's only 6%. 6%. Everybody else say that they speak English, that they kind of get it, but they don't really. If I were to do just one change, I don't think that we have the political will to do it. But it will be amazing. It will be that in TV shows and movies should be in English with subtitles instead of dubbing. If we do that, in 5 years probably, we will create a whole generation that speaks English and suddenly get access to the largest consumer market in the world. And that together with everything that's already happened with the 4G and 5G networks, with access to computing, everything else is there. It's just English. And
I want to just add one thing to that, because we talked about this at length and we completely agree. Give them a connection, give them coding, give them English. But the one thing I want to add to that is a sense of urgency.
yes,
Because we have in Latin America one of the youngest populations in the world. We have a demographic dividend, or whatever fancy word you want to use. But that's not going to last. We got a 10-year window for that to happen, so we cannot squander it.
Do you think it's amazing? We're in this moment, this pivotal moment where either we explode or Southeast Asia and everybody else take it away.
So if we're here 10 years from today and we haven't done this, we missed it.
Yes.
There's a sense of energy to this.
I think this is a good opportunity to see what we have to do, and I'm sure we're going to do it. America, as you will say, has a lot of challenges. Connectivity and education is key to go ahead and to transform our countries. So with people like you, I'm sure that's going to happen. And with everybody that's present here and listens to this, well, just join this idea of helping in education, because that is the chance that we have for the America. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and let's work together. I would say that. Thank you.
Thank you.